Welcome to Cozy Coven Chats with Jenny C. Bell, where we explore the journey of the witch. Hi, and welcome to another Cozy Coven Chat. I am your host, Jenny C. Bell, and this is for the week of April 12th. April 12th. So right off the bat, we have a new moon on April 17th. And that's in Aries. And we talked last week about, with the King of Wands, about this Aries fiery energy lighting us up and using or stepping into harnessing that Aries energy to get things done. And so we have more of that. You know, Aries is the baby of the zodiac, right? It's the beginning of the zodiac. And so this is like, Aries is a fire sign. So it's like this whole fiery kind of rebirth feeling with this new moon. And so if you haven't felt the energy, I know that for a lot of people I talked to, February and March were really heavy, draining, and exhausting. So a lot of people I've talked to have talked about how sluggish it was. And I remember I have the Chani app, and I remember listening to the whole year ahead for myself from her, and her talking about February and March aren't going to be that spring renewal, fresh energy that we're used to. And it definitely felt that way. It felt kind of like treading through sand for a lot of it. And so I'm looking at this new moon in Aries as like a fresh start. So personally, what I would be doing is something with candles because of the fiery element. And so I think, at the very least, light a candle and ask for some of this fiery energy to enter your life, to burn away what's not serving you, to burn away obstacles, to burn away old stagnant energy, whatever's left over from winter, and then ask it to light you up. Light you up and get you going again. I have a meditation with Bridget, with the goddess Saint Bridget, and it's all about using flames to light you up, using her eternal flame to re-fan your flame inside of you. And so, it's that idea of stepping into Aries energy and embracing it. A lot of people, Aries get made fun of a lot. There's several, all the zodiac signs get made fun of, but I feel like Aries gets made fun of a lot as being babies and having temper tantrums and all this. But there's something to be said with the energy. It's very like Knight of Wands energy. It's very the Fool from Tarot also, or it's just fresh start, going into it, don't care. I'm not going to let old problems, old things, worries, fears bother me. I'm just going to go forward, go forth. And we need that. We definitely need that sometimes. As an earth sign, I appreciate it. Definitely. Because that's not my norm. My norm is to be like Piglet from Winnie the Pooh and be like, oh, here, and be really find all of the things to be worried about. Why aren't you worried? So Aries is more just do it, just get out there. So let's all take a page out of that. So that's how I'm kind of looking at the new moon. Our card, we're still using the Magical Hours Tarot, which I really love. And we got Ace of Cups, which I thought was great too, because when we have a new moon's a lot like an ace because it's a fresh start. And this Ace of Cups is really beautiful. There's a pretty sunset and a woman in a field of flowers, and she has a teacup with a goldfish in it, and she's this beautiful young redhead. She looks very powerful. And so the book says, and these are twilight plants. So I think last week I told you what kind of plants. That's what I like about this tarot in particular, is the major arcana all have a time, which is really cool, right? So it's a time of day. So let me just, for instance, the Hierophant is 9 a.m., right? The star is 12 a.m. The devil is 9 p.m. So interesting. So we're looking at twilight as being important. And I kind of like that because this time of year, like we can actually enjoy twilight. It feels like the sun sets longer at this time, at least in the PNW. Whereas like in the winter, it just feels like someone like pulls the shade down and it's like suddenly night. It's like in an old cartoon. So Ace of Cups, twilight plants. As the archetype of the suit and its synthesis, the Ace of Cups holds and makes in all emotional waters flow. This is where all the emotions encountered in the cards that follow it originate from and will return to. How difficult is it to tune into what we really feel? Here we are given the opportunity to discover how we feel, not just physically, but emotionally. How do we feel in the situation for which we want clarification? How does the person, that job, the experience we just went through make us feel? The Ace of Cups gently brings light toward the heart and asks you to pay attention to what nourishes and heals you. In the waters of the seed, every emotion has a right to take shape without overwhelming the others, without overwhelming us. So it's interesting because I talked about how Aries, often the stereotype is like throwing tantrums and, angry and whatever, emotionally flies. It's like the toddler, even though they're the baby of the zodiac. I think I'm the toddler. I'm a Taurus, which makes sense because I just love to touch everything. If you've ever had a toddler, they're very tactile. One of the things I like to do with my kids when they're toddlers is I would get a cookie sheet and put different types of beans, dried beans, and they would just play with them. This is like until my son, he ate them. My daughter wouldn't eat them, but when my son started eating them, we had to stop that game. So anyway, so with Ace of Cups, we have this like fresh start, emotional renewal, looking at our emotions, and then with Aries new moon, it's like a same idea, right? Like rebirth. So yeah, being reborn this week, which bring it on, really. Bring it on. Okay, so we have that. I'm going to remind you that I'm going to be at Spirit Northwest at the end of this month in Portland, so join me there. I'm also going to remind you that I will be starting to be a guest co-host on Belief, Being, and Beyond with Granddaughter Crow. And that was really interesting how that worked out. She was the first podcast I was ever on, and I don't even remember the first episode. Wasn't necessarily on spirit crystals. I forget. We like met through Instagram. It was like one of those things where we just kind of vibed. And she's like, "You want to come on the podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then I came back for my book. And then I had her on my show. So you can dig deep in here. When I was like experimenting with what I wanted the show to be, I was like, maybe I want to interview people. And she was actually a really good guest. So I had her on here. Then I went back on her show I was on her Samhain episode, just really fun Through the Veil series, and I was the Samhain episode. So yeah, we've just maintained like a friendship because believe it or not, doing what I'm doing is very solo, like I was talking to her yesterday actually about this, like, you speak into these voids like I am right now. You're not here with me physically. I speak into the void. It's kind of like speaking into one of those cups and strings, from like childhood, and like maybe someone will hear you. So I'm speaking to the void. When I write a book, the reader's not with me, and then later they read it and we share a hallucinogenic moment, really, because like reading is really like hallucinating, and it's just a lot of what I do is I haven't met anybody in our coven in person yet. So it's just very, everything I do is in the ether. It's all in the ether realm. And so, it can get kind of weird. You can get you got to get outside. I got to touch grass. I got to ground. Like after I record podcasts, I always go outside. After I do card readings, I go outside. Even that, I do card readings just long distance, So like, we talked about, I had an idea for a different podcast, like totally separate from what we both do. And that just didn't work out for a number of reasons. And then she was like, well, what if you come on my show sometimes and just like guest co-host? Because she was looking at the Llewellyn catalog for the year and she saw this book coming out that was about Dracula or vampires. And she's like, I feel like Jenny would think that was fun because my degree's in literature. And she's seen me on the movie Coven, and I try to take on kind of like this literature witch role. And so she was like, what if you just come on there sometimes, since the other podcast isn't in the works yet. It's kind of on hold until things line up. And I was like, yeah, that actually sounds really fun. Like, I'll just pop on there sometime. So we're rocking and rolling, as we say. And so we like just have had all these great ideas, and we've have books sent to us recently, and then we were like, oh, this person would be a great guest. And so it's just going to be a blast. And her show's really fun. And I think it's funny, we're actually the same Chinese zodiac sign. We're both the dogs, but exactly 12 years apart. We both have Gemini suns, and she's a Cancer sun, I'm a Cancer rising. So it's a lot of synchronicities. The biggest one being that we both pulled the same rune for the year. And I didn't even know she pulled runes for the year, but she does. So it's just been all these things lining up, and that's just kind of the best, is when these synchronicities happen. I feel like it's always the universe being like, yep, this is what we wanted you to do. Like, this was part of the plan. That's what I look at when I see just like synchronicities and signs, it's just confirmation. Like, yeah, this is what you're supposed to be doing right now. So really positive. So we are still diving into divergent witchcraft, which we'll get to in a moment. Talking about seasons, we're in spring, so we're in between the spring equinox and Beltane. And so I'll talk more about Beltane later, but Beltane is the like maypole, fertility, hedonistic, like all those beautiful art pieces. There's a lot of them, of people like getting drunk with fairies or fairies drinking and dancing in the woods. And, this just like this idea of just revelry, that's Beltane energy. And so like, that's why this new moon in Aries is fun. Cause it's like, yeah, let's get fired up. Let's get lit. Do kids say that anymore? I don't think they do. One of my favorite things to do as a parent, and feel free to take this idea, is to use your kids' slang in conversation at dinner unexpectedly. So the one that they like, I'll be like, oh yeah, no cap, bro. Or recently I called my son Unk, and my daughter was like, you can't say that because I'm an Unk. And I'm like, I know, and that's why it's funny. The irony is lost on them, but not on me. It's like my own, it's like Andy Kaufman humor. It's like only funny to me. Or like how Salvador Dali would dress up as a priest and do weird things on a bus, in public transit. It was like only funny for him. So feel free. Use their slang. It makes them so mad, and it's just funny because it's ridiculous. Anyway, so we are continuing on Divergent Witchcraft. And this next chapter that we're going to talk about is a chapter on the elements. And it's called The Elements Within and Without. And in witchcraft, in paganism, the elements are earth, air, fire, water, a fifth being spirit. That's very similar to a lot of Native American and indigenous beliefs in elements, but is different than Chinese beliefs in element. So I have a whole post about the elements on Substack, but there's just different takes on the elements. There's different beliefs on where and what direction the elements are. So for me, for a lot of witches, earth is north, so it's associated with the direction of north. And then east is air, and then west is water, and fire in the south. And there's different ways to call in the elements. So some people will start with north, being like, okay, directional north, I'm going to call in that element. And there's different things you can call in with elements. You can call in, associated with north is gnomes. There's angels, there's watchers, there's deities, there's all kinds of things. Stones, different things associated with the different elements. So for north, some people will start there and they'll call in the element of north. Some people start with the east, which also makes sense. There's a lot of ties to the east with Buddhism especially. But, that's the sunrises, at least, like that's where the sun rises. So people will be like, we start in the east. When I took some classes on shamanism, you start in the south because those classes came from South America. So it makes sense they start in the south. But then I was like, I'm just gonna try it. I would have been a call on the north first girl for as long as I can remember. I was like, I'm gonna try south because then I end in the east. Like the way I do it. So I'm like south, west, north, east. That's how, like, I was like, let me just kind of, you got to change up your practice. I ended up actually really liking that. So I still will do that sometimes. Keep it fresh, So the pentacle or the pentagram is technically just a star, and the pentacle is the star with the circle around it. And most witches like the pentacle to be like single point facing up. And that's because it's a representation for a lot of people of earth, air, fire, water, the top point being spirit. It's kind of like with a person, if you stand with your arms raised up and your legs wide, you look like a star, right? And so it's kind of also like representation of you as a spirit, as having soul, having embodiment, and then you are all the elements. So pentacle, it can be seen that way. It can be seen in other ways, but that's what I always preferred, and that's why I don't use or don't agree with upside down pentacle, because to me, that means spirit's at the bottom and straining out. But there's different definitions, different ways of seeing things. The thing is with witchcraft, so much of like the actual real knowledge has been lost, and then Wicca invented some new stuff, and that's become part of the collective belief. And then now more people who come from like hoodoo, voodoo, and other folk magic practitioners with those backgrounds, like brujeria, Italian folk magic, Polish folk magic, more of those people are coming forward and writing books. And that's getting input into like the collective and us understanding things. But for so long, you're really limited to writers who were influenced by Wicca. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because it's here now and enough people believe in it that I believe in the power of collective belief. So that's why I always say like it's your truth because enough people believe it, right? So do I think Jesus was like the only son of God and that whole stuff? No, but a lot of people believe it. And so it's powerful because there's a collective belief. If you really look into like Jung and collective consciousness and, everything, we're all so connected. Even like in Native American belief, there's like certain belief in the web of life and you have the tree of life, but quantum physics shows this, we're all just connected energetically. So I always thought, and I still think this, like this is how religions work. Enough people believe it that it becomes true. In a sense, or true to an effect. And that's why, like, I read that book, Heaven is for Real. I remember I gave it to a friend of mine, and she's like, but I don't believe in heaven. Like, I didn't like it because I don't believe in heaven. I said, well, that book, that child is raised in a Christian faith with Christian family. Like, he saw the afterlife the way he did because it had to be presented that way for everybody else to understand and accept it. And she was like, oh, like she just didn't think of it that way. And that's just how my brain has always worked. I studied world religions. I studied, we used to go to a Buddhist temple. I have had Muslim friends and Jewish friends and been to different churches. My husband did a deep research on Mormonism when he was in college. Like there's just, I just feel like if what you believe in doesn't hurt people, it's cool. It's fine. But when you start doing stuff like hunting people because they're not of that religion, there's a problem. In fact, my world religions professor said something so profound and it made me just like love her. She had studied theology and then was like, I can't actually be a minister. And that happens a lot, believe it or not, with people that study anything for so long. It's like you kind of go, I don't know if I really believe this. And she said that for her, this is her opinion, and take it or leave it, it's very interesting, that she thought when humanity moved away from paganism and multiple deities and like pantheons, and moved to monotheism, she felt that was like showed evolution, because she was like, this shows that they are seeing that it's all one source. However, she then said that when people started killing other people in the name of their one religion, that was a de-evolution. Hey, it's Jenny interrupting myself to invite you to join my private Cozy and international community, our Coven. We are an inclusive community off of main social media dedicated to learning and growing as witches. To learn more, please go to jennycbell.com. And I remember just like sitting there and just like, I love her. Like that was so profound to me. And it's so interesting. So you can agree or disagree, but that was her philosophy, and that was part of why she couldn't be like a Christian minister, because she was just like, I don't like it doesn't make sense to her that you use your religion to hate people. And it doesn't make sense to me still to this day. So back to the elements. We have these different elements, and there's a lot of witches who are like, don't want to work with a deity. And you don't have to. There's like this, like a lot of, it's like throughout social media, it's like, oh, I worship Hecate and I worship this. You don't have to do that. You don't have to devote yourself. In fact, I didn't devote myself to a singular being until like my late 30s. So I was just kind of like I liked certain like beings. Like I really liked Kuan Yin. I've always liked Kuan Yin, and I've even had someone tell me I had a past life where I worshipped her, and like makes perfect sense. Or Guan Yin, depending on how you want to say it. But I've always been drawn to her. I've always been drawn to Kali, the Kali Ma, and I went to this huge Kali exhibit of art, and it's just like, yep, I know this. Like it just felt right into my bones. But I was not devoted to anybody. Just kind of like research about them. I would like to like see them in my goddess decks or whatever, but I wasn't really like devoted. And partly because I had a lot of religious wounding, like I just had to like heal myself to be like, do I want to devote myself to something? Because I would just say basically God and goddess. That was, or goddess and God usually. And so that was me. But there's a lot of witches that don't even like want that. They don't want that connection. They don't believe in a universe, spirit, or God, goddess, whatever you want to call it. They don't believe in that. And they instead like believe in the energy. They just believe in energy. And so working with the elements is perfect for someone like this, because you can tap into the earth energy, and the energy of the earth, and the land spirits, and the gnomes, and the stones, and the plants and trees, and the flowers, and the deva, and really like get into this energy of earth without ever talking about a goddess or a god, even though there are definitely goddesses and gods of the earth, right? There's earth-based deities. You don't have to do that. And why that's good for you as a witch and doing witchcraft and doing spell work is you don't really want to rely on your own power. When people do a circle of protection and they rely on their own energy, it's draining. So if you're like, you get up and you're like, I'm going to do the circle of protection, and I'm going to talk more about this thing in the next episode, because the next chapter is on protection. But you do that and you rely on your own energy, you're draining yourself of energy to protect yourself. And so connecting with the elements is going to add energy to your spells, energy to your protection. And I think also it's like a really fun way to see things, because you can look at the seasons as elements. You obviously can see the zodiac as elements. You can see the 4 tarot minor arcana as elements. It's like so enmeshed in witchcraft and magic, like so deeply enmeshed. And like when you start really looking at it, you're like, oh my gosh, like the elements really are like such ingrained in different forms of magic. And so that's, really what I talk about in the book. And I talk about how to connect to the four elements and like why. And like what I'm telling you right now, the why is because it's so enmeshed. Like if you really get to understand the four elements, you connect with them, you start connecting with them in magic, you have like, a bowl of sand on your altar for earth, and you really feel earth and you get the energy and you really get that spirit of earth. All of a sudden, you understand the pentacles of the tarot because you're like, oh, this is earth. And you see it through that lens. It's like, oh, this is so much easier to understand. You start, when you meet an earth sign, you've really intimately connected with earth energy. And you can start recognizing like, oh, are you like a Virgo? Because you're just giving off earth energy. You can feel like the changes, the seasons, because you're connected to the earth. So I really think that the elements in modern witchcraft, like on TikTok and what I'm seeing on social media, they're like no one cares anymore. Like, I remember being a new witch and it was such a big deal. Like every book was like, you need to know the elementals and the elements and you need to connect. And now it's like no one talks about it. And that could be, things come in and out of fashion. It could be that Wicca is out of fashion, whatever. But I think that it's huge. And it's even part of alchemy. So there's like a lot of the symbols for like the 4 symbols that people use for the elements come from alchemy. So it's just like so ingrained in our culture, in every culture, definitely like all over the world. They like the different elements, and elements are talked about. And then you go to chemistry and there's like elements, it's like, it's elemental, it's foundational. But yeah, so if you haven't really revisited or connected with the 4 elements, like it's been a long time for you, you're like, oh yeah, I did kind of study that in the beginning, or you're new and this is intriguing to you, you gotta just jump in. I have articles in our coven about the elements. Like I said, there's one on Substack, and then there'll be a chapter in the book. But I think sort of like how I've talked about how you can just spend like a whole like year with just one tarot card, you can do the same with the elements. Like you could be like, right now we're in a fire year through Chinese astrology. So it's the year of the fire horse, and we're in a fire season with Aries. So you could be like, I'm going to really tap into this fire energy. And then that could be for the whole year, or that could be just for the season of Aries, and you'll return when we get to Leo, and you'll just keep returning for the different fire signs. So I don't know. I think it's fun. I love candle magic, talking about fire. I just feel like having these basic foundations helps you grow your progress. And it's like knowing the 4 elements and how they connect really helps you understand correspondences, and correspondences are used in spell creation. And that's what I'll be talking about in my class at Spire Northwest. But also, be talking about in our coven, like correspondences. There's books of correspondences, but there's so much comes back to the elements. And I just think it's fun. It's elemental, dear Watson. I think I botched that quote. Let's go ahead and do our journal questions. So for the new moon in Aries, where do you need some fire in your life? And what is being reborn in your life? The Ace of Cups. What emotions are coming up? What's the next emotional journey for you? Because we're starting a new moon too, so it's like a whole journey. What's the next cycle look like for you? And then let's just do 4 questions on the elements. What do you associate with earth? What do you associate with air? What do you associate with fire? And what do you associate with water? And those can become your own personal correspondences. So thanks so much for listening. Blessed be. As always, thank you for listening. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And be on the lookout for my books, Spirit Crystals, Discover Your Crystal Guide for Healing and Empowerment, and Divergent Witchcraft, an inclusive approach to making magic. And if you want to connect with me more, go to jennycbell.com, JennyCbell.com, to learn about our coven, to learn how to follow me on Substack, and also how to get a reading from me. Blessed be witches.